Welcome to the Your Life, Your Brand podcast with myself, James Oliver. Please hit the follow or subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. This episode, I am joined by Mac Frost, the current owner of the British Drift Championship, which is the UK's largest and longest standing drifting championship. He was a former IT technician turned social media marketer and content creator. Alongside being an early Bitcoin investor, he also believes in positive mental attitude over everything. So let's dive right in. Mac, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Hello.
So I think the logical place for us to start is back at the beginning. How did you get into the motorsport scene?
My way in was different to most people because I was not a driver or involved with organizing or competition in any way. I came in from the media side of the business. So prior to being involved with drifting, I was very interested in social media. I was trying to build a career in social and using different platforms and things like that. That led me to making YouTube videos and things like that. And we found BDC off of the back of other drifting content. And I entered into just being a media guy, standing out by the track, filming and doing that stuff.
So always been into the media side. Was that outside of motorsport as well, or was that only in motorsport?
No, very much from outside of it. And I came into motorsport a lot later. So as a teenager, I was skateboarding and we used to make skate videos. And that was how we got into video production. That was something I did for a very long time. You know, you sort of grow up and you end up getting a job and doing other things. And I was doing IT and working. And then I came full circle and I wanted to come back to creating and being creative again because I got a lot of enjoyment from it. And I didn't get a lot of enjoyment from, soul destroying, sitting in a cubicle 9 to 5, 5 days a week, solving IT problems. So I just decided to take a gamble at that point and pushed into doing media. I was very lucky to be around a few people who were already in that world, who gave me a bit of a foot in the door in some respect and helped out with some of the equipment and money and things, and that got us into media. And we were doing media about anything. We were quite early in on doing stuff with drones. So we would be just showing up in various city centers and putting drones right up in the air and filming and doing things and making content around that. And then that led us to meet people who had cool cars. And then we were kind of making content with cars and drifting and drones and things that now probably wouldn't approve of, but whatever. And then, that sort of led to where motorsport became the thing.
A great question for me is, how did you end up running and owning the British Drift Championship from a career in media?
Okay, so I always say that in life, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. And that just became totally the case behind this story. So I did okay on a few platforms, and I was pushing endlessly to find an actual full-time sort of paid role within media, and drift became this thing I was interested in. I'd seen BDC, and to me, I looked at BDC from the outside, saw a lot of sponsorship, a lot of drivers, and I assumed everyone there was just, it was like F1, but with drift cars. Like there was money, it was all good. So my flatmate at the time, who I lived with, who was a mechanic, got a job working at Slide Motorsport. So Slide had the team in the British Drift Championships. That was Matt Stevenson. And basically Jimmy, my friend, got working for Matt. And I was like, look, pitch the guy on what I do. I was like, just tell him you live with a guy who does media. I know about this, I know about that. I've got these audiences. I will come in and I will do everything for them and they can give me a job. So, he went and had a word with Matt, and Matt's very he's very driven on business, and he saw, I think, something in internet marketing and social media that he didn't understand. So he just wanted to have a conversation with me. So I came into Slide one day and I basically sat in his office and I pitched the hell out of it just to be like, look, I can do this. We can build these platforms. They already had Facebook and Instagram, but they weren't doing tons with it. And I was just there and I was like, I can do this, I can do that. I used to work in IT. I did this. And he went, all right. And he went, so what would you do if you were here today? And I went, well, we could do this and that. And he went, no. He went, there's a broken computer downstairs. Can you go and fix it for me? And I was like, yeah, let's go and do it. So I fixed a computer for him, and he was like, right, use that computer to make this thing on a spreadsheet for me. I was like, sure, let's do it. Like, just show I've got some value there. And at the end of it, he was like, look, I can't give you a full-time job, but you can do 3 days a week here, minimum wage. You're in the door. And I was like, that's perfect. So we took the risk. I was lucky. The job I had at the time was very flexible, so I could split between 2 companies. But then for like tax reasons, a month later or 6 weeks later, I was like, I'm losing money to be taxed so heavily on having 2 jobs. So I just quit the second job. I just throw caution to the wind, sort of went to Slide full time. Matt agreed to give me a 4th day. So I was like just scraping it, couldn't even like hardly afford my rent on my apartment, but it was just worth the gamble to get my foot in the door of being at Slide. So that was more, they have the drift team. We were making content for the drift team, but I was like picking up the phone in the shop talking about car parts, and I knew. Well, at first I thought I knew stuff, and then I very quickly realized, no, the names of some parts that go on a car, but you've got no idea. So I was just having to learn constantly why I was doing it. That got me in there. And after 3-4 months of being at Slide, the BDC season started up, and Matt was like, look, you can come to BDC with us. He was like, I can't pay you anything else to do BDC. I'll speak to Dave Egan. I'll get you on media at BDC. You just come with the team and make a vlog and do a vlog. So that was me now in media vlogging. And this was 2018. There was not really anyone vlogging at BDC at that time. And I wasn't even well received by the other media people, because they were just like, who's this complete outsider who's like, I'm like stood by the track filming on my phone and like, oh, well, this cool slow-mo shot for Instagram, and everyone else is there like laughing at me a little bit, but whatever. So yeah, foot in the door in BDC now with Slide, making vlogs, having a great time, going out there. And at the same time on the Slide side of the business, like I was doing okay, and I ended up going full time, getting a little bit more money, sort of made it sustainable to stay there and keep doing it. And then come the end of the year, like as the BDC season finished off, Matt sort of sat me down in his office and went, I'm going to tell you a secret. And I went, all right. And he went, I've bought BDC. And I went, you're a liar. No, you haven't. And so he bought BDC, and we talked about it. And I went, can I swap over and do all the media for BDC? And he went, no, absolutely not. And I went, why? And he went, no. Chris is doing the video. Beezy's doing the pictures. I don't need you. You do Slide, but I own BDC now. And I was like, all right, cool. So, he wouldn't give me a job. And about 2 or 3 months after that, once it was all public, he owned it. And he was pushing ahead with the season. They were just about to launch the season, and he was signing sponsors, and he needed somebody to write all the press releases for the different sponsors and do the pieces for the website. So he asked me, and he said, hey, have you got any free time to do that? I said, sure. So I did that, and that quickly led to me then running all the social media for BDC. And as we built up to the T-side round, the first round of 2019, Matt said to me, he went, look, you're doing well at all this. I need someone to be the sort of number 2 behind me on it to make sure it's all running. I'm going to swap you over, if you're cool with it, from doing Slide to doing BDC. And I was like, I've been waiting 6 months for you to say that to me. So yes. We came into round 1 of BDC, pretty blind, both of us, to what it was. Like Matt had driven in the championship for a long time. I'd done media there for a year. And then, we're getting to like the morning of Pro 2 competition. So the practice days already happened. And Malx and Minnie, shout out to them. They used to do all the gridding for the championship. They really helped us that first year. And they came over and went, okay, Matt says you'll have the running order for today. So like the list of the order of people who we send out to do qualifying. And I was like, what's a running order? we were so unprepared. So again, it was kind of very similar to the year before with learning everything for Slide and learning about Sylvia's and 200SX car model. It was just learn how you run a drift event, like under the pressure of doing it. what has to happen in those back offices during the events and the towers and the systems. And we went through it, and we actually redesigned a lot of it as we went to change certain things. First year was kind of a success overall. Like we pulled it off. There was a lot of things to overcome with it, but 2019 happened. So I'm like officially now the manager of BDC, working under Matt, and Matt, really big credit to him from me personally, because he mentored me and taught me a lot about the business side of things. And he always pushed me to do more. Like I could be a little bit unfocused sometimes. He would always be like, right, get after this, get after that. And 2020 happened. You know, the start of the year, we had a great calendar put together. Very exciting, bringing Drift Masters into the UK for the first time, launching our own car show brand, some big stuff on the calendar, and COVID. So COVID happened.
March 2020.
March 2020. We went from sort of early March looking at the news, and we even went so far as to write a press release that was like, nah, BDC is going to run. We're a small event, it's outdoors. We're not worried about COVID. To within a week of that, we postponed the first event, to then suddenly I was working from home and got furloughed at some point. Like it was crazy. And I'd never have got through that without Matt being the person in charge of the business at that time, because he was very savvy on the numbers and the money and how to get a loan and do this and get funding. And he got us through that year. And in the drifting world, people look at that 2020 year as been a bad year for BDC. And in a lot of ways it was, but equally it could have been the end. This is a small independent motorsport series, really, in the reality of things, when you compare us to basically anything else. And we survived it. And unfortunately, there were certain things that happened as a result of that, where other people got upset, or the drift community didn't stick together, and there was some separation and a sort of big breakup that later became quite public. And at the end of the year, Matt was really disheartened by a lot of what had gone on. And on December the 21st, that UKDC got announced. They had a huge, savage press release to that. We knew most of what was coming anyway, because again, small industry, people talk, about it. And we had like a group chat with me, Matt, and Chris and Harry, the other two guys who worked for us full time at that point. And there was a fair bit of panic. And I said, I actually know exactly what to do to win. And everyone went, what? And I went, look, don't worry, I'm gonna talk to Matt about it. I had a call with Matt on I think it was literally like the first day of our Christmas holiday. I sort of phoned Matt and I pitched him and I went, this is what we need to do. And he went, okay, cool, let's do that. And then a week later, during Christmas, Matt phoned me and said, I've lost the heart for it. He said, your plan sounds good, but I don't want to do it. He was like, I've bought a house. I want to renovate my house. I want to do this. I want to do that. I've got Slide. I need to focus on Slide again as a business. So I think you're the man for the job. Do you want to buy BDC from me? And once again, I was like, is this guy joking? Is he mad? At first I was going to say no. I didn't even say yes immediately, because I had to take some time and think about it a little bit, because I'd only been in drifting for 2 years, and there's people who've been doing it for 10 years who clearly had a lot better backing and funding than me and that sort of thing. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, I've built a lot of these sponsor relationships myself. I know all the drivers. I know everyone personally. I know all the venue owners. I was pretty much in that position where I was like, well, if I don't do it, what am I going to do? And yeah, I didn't want to go back to working in IT. I didn't want to go back to trying to do little social videos or anything like that. So I put my money where my mouth was, and I committed and I bought it, and we signed papers on January the 3rd and January the 4th. And I came home from buying the business and signing the papers and turned the telly on, and Boris put us into a national lockdown for 3 months. And I was like, what have I done? And my girlfriend was very mad at me, but hey, we all made it through it. So that's how I went from being a media guy to owning a drift championship.
Absolutely crazy story, to be honest, from start to finish. Lots of ups and downs, especially with COVID, the division of the drift community as well, I think was such a big thing. and uncertainty in where drivers would go.
Yeah.
One thing I'm really interested to know is, what tactics do you use to build the brand, to attract sponsors, new drivers, spectators, and how does that differ from one another?
So they're all massively different. First of all, from a sponsor perspective, like sponsors want to hear big numbers, right? Because everybody wants to know that they're putting their brand in front of the best audience that they possibly can. They also want to know that what you're doing is unique, because there's a lot of competition in that respect. When you come to getting somebody's marketing budget, they could be spending that on Google AdWords, they could be spending that on Facebook ads, or they could be spending that on something wild like sponsoring a drift championship, which is pretty out there. But there is a big audience. We do have big social platforms that have been built over a long time. We do get a lot of reach, and we have put a lot of work into SEO and other things to make sure BDC is up there as the sort of top thing when it comes to drifting within the UK. So that's the sponsor side of it. It's really having the confidence to make a pitch and know what you're selling. And that was just a learning process there. And my time at Slide taught me a lot about that, because we were, having similar conversations to bring brands in to distribute product for them. So I had some foot in there. So that was just learning that on the fly. Drivers was the key one to get on board to have the success that we did last year. And part of that came down to having had personal relationships with those people for the previous 2 years, from doing media to then running the championship. And people would often come to me with problems, and I would just be really happy to help them solve them. And a lot of the drivers just wanted to know that they were going to be driving with the best people. That was the thing that we kept hearing again and again. So it was really like a level of reassurance to people. And I literally, I don't even know if I should say this, but I made a spreadsheet on my computer, and I got every single driver who'd competed in the championship from 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And I wrote their names down in a list, and I messaged every single one of them, every single person. And after every conversation, I made a little note on that spreadsheet that said what that person was doing and how they felt about it. And I kind of started connecting them together. And I was spending, in the run up to round one of the championship, on iPhone, you get your metrics of what you're doing. And it was like your screen time on your phone is like 15 hours a day. It was a lot. And the breakdown of that was Facebook Messenger was like 8.5 hours a day on average over a week. And that was just me talking to 300 potential drivers, some of them who weren't even in the country, who couldn't even get into the country because of COVID restrictions. But it didn't matter, because it was just networking around those drivers was like a full-time committed role from, I don't know, like early January to sort of mid-April. That's pretty much what I did every day, was just have everyone there. And the more that you got people talking about it, the more that the drivers got the buzz for it. And before you knew it, we were releasing round one, this huge driver list, like the biggest driver list in Teesside history at that time for a round, pretty much was our first one. So getting the drivers on board, a lot of reassurance and a lot of networking around people. And then the fans. So the fans supported BDC pretty much without question. That's because of the heritage. So that's a lot longer than I've had that brand. That's 15 years now. That was 14 years last year. So there was, that the brand is what it is. But something was being floated out there that was potentially better, right? So I just had to tug on people's heartstrings with marketing and just talk about the heritage, talk about what had come before, talk about what had been built. And people did stay behind that. But naturally, because we had good sponsors who were on board to fund the thing, and we had the support of the drivers who came out in huge record numbers, the fans just were excited. And then the year 2 of COVID was different for the business because it still affected us negatively. I had to rearrange a flagship event that I then had to cancel because it was too high risk. So there was huge negatives there and lost money on that as well. But in a lot of ways, it kind of helped us in a strange way, because we could run the events and we could have a crowd. And like, round one, the venue gave us a X amount of tickets. Like, you can sell this many tickets to have this many spectators here based on you having this many drivers and this many crew. So there's a total count on there. And that just allowed us to like transition the whole business to just a pre-sale only model for last year, which was just a huge help financially to know that you've got that gate secured ahead of the event. So the fans came out, they supported. Every event was as packed as it could be in the earlier half of the year. And then the latter half of the year, obviously restrictions lifted and we were great. And then we broke a lot of records with attendance and other things. And we kept breaking records with drivers, because the drivers knew they were being treated in the right way when they came to us. They were getting the right promotion from us as a part of it. And then, the actual show of the event was crazy. And we were just doing everything we could to get through. So yeah, there you go. That's kind of a little bit on each of the areas.
You touched on quite a few interesting points there, and one of which was tugging on the heartstrings of both fans and I guess drivers. And I was having a conversation the other day about emotions, and that's one thing that's never changed in marketing. If you don't get someone with emotional attachment, they're never going to take any action.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose for me, you use multiple different streams, both phone calls, Facebook Messenger you mentioned there, and obviously organic social media is probably a huge part of it. How important is social media in your overall marketing strategy, and what do you kind of target?
It's literally everything. Like, at this point, drifting lives largely on Facebook and Instagram. So we market predominantly to the Facebook audience. We've seen the demographic change a little bit over the 4 years now that I've been in charge. The audience has matured in terms of age. Some of it was people aging out of like the 18 to 24 into the 25 to 34 demographic, but also we've seen a bigger uptake in that other demographic. And we think that's because of the marketing was been done by people in that age range. So yeah, we've always targeted against them. We've run paid advertisement. Like, I ran more paid advertisement last year than I think we did in the 2 years previous under that for Matt, because, well, just there's a different approach to the business really. But I've never spent a ton on adverts, because a lot of it can be community driven. So there are enough people there to organically share, and that gets harder and harder now. And in fact, this year that's not doing so great. So we're having to rethink and readjust. But yeah, social media marketing is just absolutely everything to the business. Funnily, talking about social media marketing, we see negatives in certain other ways. Like, so TikTok basically was getting big. Everybody's hearing about it. Everybody was saying, get on TikTok. So we tried to take BDC to TikTok and build an audience there. And at first we were doing okay. I wasn't running it myself because I hadn't used the platform. So I wasn't familiar enough with it. So I outsourced it to a couple of people we knew and trusted who were doing good numbers there. And it tailored off really quick. And we sort of fell into getting shadow banned on TikTok. Like, the BDC account got really heavily shadow banned. And actually talking to a lot of other people who were in drift who've used TikTok, if you're sharing content of cars on a racetrack, you seem to be getting shadow banned for it. So like, it's a market we've never cracked because of that, which is weird, because you see videos of people doing like Street-O and burnouts at car shows and other things that seem to do millions of views, and you wonder how or what is happening with that, or what decision that is for them as a company to do that. But so yeah, so we've built on Facebook, huge audience, does very well. Instagram, we've again almost doubled the audience size since I first took control of that there, and we were doing really, really well. And then Instagram has now pushed much more into video, so we're still We're currently building out like a social media campaign for the future with much more video to go onto Instagram. YouTube was one where, the stream's been there. So there was a small audience around that, but then we've quadrupled that in size. And we now also produce vlogs and other bespoke content just specifically for YouTube as well. And we're just constantly trying to build on it. Like, what's the next thing? What are we hearing about? I have put it onto LinkedIn. We did start BDC on LinkedIn last year, but then just due to time constraints, we've not really done it. But right now, that's something that I'm trying to build on at the moment. And just always trying to stay ahead of the curve and trying to figure out what the best thing is to get reach and organic reach and not be spending tons of money, because as a business, we don't have the financial backing to just be going, hey, let's just run $5,000 worth of ads this month, because you won't see that come back in ticket sales partly because the venues we're at are too small to have the crowds, or even if I could spend $5,000 on adverts to translate that into a 10x ticket sale, that I wouldn't be able to sell that many tickets. So, yeah.
So day to day, you're running and overseeing everything to do with the British Drift Championship now. So take me through how your early career set you up to be successful in this role. You've mentioned mentorship from the previous owner, Matt. What other needle movers has there been in your career?
So prior to marketing, media, drifting, any of that stuff, I worked in IT. There was a lot of problem solving. And part of what we used to do, we would design network infrastructure for large companies. Really, really boring. You can just feel how boring it is when I say what it was. And the thing with that is you're kind of taking like a mammoth task and you're sort of breaking it down into parts, and you're going, right, okay, how does this work? How does that work? How does this translate to that? And you sort of have to start working through problems small bits at a time to build your way up to get the big fixes. And actually that was really the approach that, like, for instance, I took when it came to us going against UKDC last year. I really took that same approach of just sort of breaking down what everyone did and what happened and how it would work, and then tactically work my way through it. So that problem solving mentality that, that's 10 years of experience in that, that's always been a huge factor for me. Obviously, yeah, the mentorship that I got from Matt, which really taught me how to make money as a business, like how to make sure that your incoming is greater than your outgoing, and just to be focused and to be always not just going, right, okay, we've got this down, we can produce this, we can make this, we can do that, but then to always be like, what's the next step of that? And then how do we action the next step of it by raising the appropriate funds or by managing time and things like that? And that's what a lot of it comes down to, because for this business, we're an events company. We run 5 to 10 events per year through different things, some of them bigger than others, but there are 3 of us full time who do it. Like, it's a really small team. Come the event, I have 40 staff, have a huge team. Everything gets done. Credit to them all. They're amazing. But out of it, there's 3 of us. So there's myself, my media guy, and my operations manager. And that's it. We have to plan, market, and make sure all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and everything's there. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot.
One of the final questions I want to ask you is, if you could go back to the start and have a do-over, what's the one bit of advice you'd give a young Mac Frost?
Okay, so first of all, I wouldn't change a great deal. And I wouldn't want myself to change a great deal, because even some of the hardships that we've gone through, that's very like character building, or however you look at it, like to overcome certain things teaches you a certain skill set, and that skill set is what helps to keep you progressing. So there's not a lot I would want to change. The biggest thing that we have right now as a problem as a business is finances, because we're a small independent company attempting to do extremely expensive things. So I would want more capital. I invested in Bitcoin in 2012, which made me very, very, very early into that. I sold nearly everything in about 2016. So I would go back to myself in 2016 and go, do not sell that. Just keep hold of that. Whatever you think you're going to do with that now, you don't need to do that. And, things would probably be very, very different for the company now, but equally, I might never have ended up in this situation here. So who knows? But yeah, definitely would have told myself to keep holding my crypto for longer.
Thank you again for spending some time with me. And finally, where can the listeners find you online?
Okay, so for the company side of things, the BDC, we are on Facebook as the British Drift Championship, Instagram as the British Drift Championship, TikTok as the BDC Official, on all those platforms. For me personally, I'm very active on Instagram. So my Instagram is at MacFrost23, and that is the best way to look up and see what I have going on in my strange and unusual life. Thank you very much for having me.